were you before this book came to life? And how did you have to grow in order to hold and have this book come out in the way that it did? Welcome to the Success Blueprint podcast, where we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship and success. Join us in uncovering the stories behind the triumphs, challenges, and invaluable lessons learned by today's most inspiring entrepreneurs. From real estate moguls to tech innovators, we explore the secrets to their success and share actionable insights to help you on your own journey. If you're looking to unlock your full potential and achieve your dreams, you're in the right place. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and empowered to take your own entrepreneurial endeavors to the next level. The show where we go beyond the highlight reel and dive into the heart of what it really takes to build a life and business of meaning, impact, and truth. Today's guest is not just a powerhouse, she is a movement maker and a master of merging strategy with soul. Ashley Deland. She's a strategic business advisor, an investor, a multi-business founder who has built, scaled, and exited ventures across 17 plus countries and industries, from wellness to hospitality to fashion, education, media, and consulting. She's the founder and CEO of multiple groundbreaking brands such as Maison Dieland, the luxury creative design house, Female Fund Her, a global mentorship and capital initiative for visionary female founders, and the Business Mastery Academy, the world's first ICF modeled business coaching certification. She's helped scale personal brands from $80,000 to $500,000 and guided seven-figure companies to over $25 million in collective revenue. Just let that number sit with you guys. But beyond the boardroom, Ashley is here to change the way that women lead, how we rise, and how we tell the truth of who we are. She is the visionary force behind Unreserved, the best-selling book, Global Summit, and growing movement where 24 powerhouse women share their raw, unfiltered stories of trauma, truth, and transformation. Guys, this is more than just a book. It's a sisterhood and a cultural shift. She has worked and being featured on Forbes Inc. and Entrepreneur and more, and she actually serves on the Forbes Business Council and has been awarded Best Female Entrepreneur in Canada in 2023 at the Stevie Awards for Women in Business, Top 40 Under 40 in Business Elites, and she was the Female Business Leader of the Year in her hometown, Burlington. So you're not that far away from me where I live. Okay. She's also been nominated for YWCA's Women of Distinction, the Women Empowerment Awards of Toronto, and Rogers Entrepreneur of the Year. As both a founder and a mother, Ashley proves that you can build a legacy and raise one at the same time. And her mission is clear: to help women stop hiding behind their success and start leading from their story. So in this episode, we're going to dive into how storytelling becomes strategy, how pain becomes power, and what happens when women choose to lead fully, fiercely, and unreserved. So Ashley, welcome to the Success Blueprint. I want to dive in with you. I am so excited. Now, you've built and sold multiple businesses all over the world. But when I got to know more about you and looked into the book, read Unreserved really feels like it came from an entirely different part of you. It's not just strategy and brain, but it's really got a lot of soul. So what I want to know is, who were you before this book came to life? And how did you have to grow in order to hold and have this book come out in the way that it did?
First and foremost, Colleen, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to share space and time with you and to all of your listeners. I think that is such a powerful opening question because I speak in a very transparent, raw, and real tone now, and I was not always like that. I would be the first to admit that I am a product of my marketing. I went to business school. I worked in a very high-level corporate job, walked away and started building, scaling, and exiting business within Canada. I continued to operate, leaving the corporate world, as a very heavily masculine power suit, the vision and version I thought I was supposed to be coming from this world. And I had a very thick exterior, very thick skin. And it took me many years to soften into my feminine energy and to lead from a place of empathy, of rawness, of truthfulness. And it took me also a very long time to understand that you have to become the woman who is willing to hold the success. It's not just about the business building, it's about who you become in the process. And I was very intentional with my process to soften up to a version of me that was proud to lead in feminine energy.
I love that, because coming from a finance background, I was a broker at 21. So I absolutely understand being in the corporate world and almost feeling that you had to embody that masculine energy. And I think it's wonderful that you've been working on bringing the feminine energy out and dominating with that as well. Mm-hmm. Now, you have built empires, like literal empires, across 17 plus countries. But it wasn't until you shared your story instead of your resume that women really started reaching out. I remember when I listened to the portion on your podcast where you mentioned this. So can you take us back to the exact moment when you knew that Unreserved had to exist, that it needed to be more than just a project, that it was actually going to become a movement and that you were going to lead that movement?
Yes. I came from a lower income place in Montreal, and I had a lot of trauma associated with my life growing up, including being in a religious cult and having a father who was in and out of jail. I was raised by a very powerful single mother, and I'm the youngest of three. And when my mother met my stepfather, we moved from a low income place into Burlington, Ontario, which is coined as Oakville's little richest town. Mm-hmm. And it was an incredible identity shift for me to have to start to play this role of somebody who was just born and bred into this kind of community and society, which was not the case at all. And I lived behind that mask and that persona for many years, all through college and university and even corporate. And it took me a very long time to understand that my pain and my trauma didn't disqualify me, and instead that it introduced me to this infinite power. And because I wanted then share what I discovered with other women, which was really the power of vulnerability, I decided that I had to lead that movement. And I created She Wears the Pants podcast and led with my truth and my story on that very first podcast. And it opened up so many doors and conversations and DMs and emails from women just around the world thanking me for, my strength, thanking me for repurposing their pain into purpose. And a lot of the messages revolved around them feeling like they now had permission to share their truth. And that is when I instantly realized that this had nothing to do with me or my story. This was a movement that women needed to feel seen and heard and understood. And by no means did I ever go on that podcast with the intention of starting a book or starting a movement or having a summit or, changing 24 women's lives. But, God works in beautiful ways. And I just had to heal myself in order to tell that story and to start that movement.
I think that's wonderful. Now, you do talk about how storytelling is one of the most radical tools that we have for healing and for leading. So why do you think that so many women are still hesitating to share their real, raw versions of their story? And when they start to share those, what do you kind of see shifting and taking place?
I want to echo again that I don't think the narrative is set enough that pain doesn't disqualify you. It introduces you to your power. And I think that a lot of women are nervous to share their story because they're afraid of being judged or being disqualified.
Yeah.
I'm really going to encourage them in a way that shows them that everything that they have been put through was given to them because they can handle. And once they heal it, they get to speak from that scar instead of the wound. And when you have that ability to heal through that trauma and speak from that place, your story is going to heal and change other people's lives and maybe even save them. And sometimes we don't understand the trauma, the pain, the challenges, the obstacles, but that's just the way of the source or universe or God allowing you to heal through it to save others. So I encourage them to share their story because on the other side of it is such an evolved, elevated version of themselves that they have not been introduced to. And you just never know who's listening and who desperately needs to hear the exact words, the exact story, the exact outcome that you've gone through.
I really agree with that, because I know I've had feedback from other guests, and when people come on and they share that story, whatever the background of it is, I get random messages from people where they're like, literally, I'm going through this right now, and you're giving me steps to get through it. So I think that that's amazing, because it really is the pain to power. And because you have coached so many women from different walks of life, founders, CEOs, creatives, a lot of people we don't realize, especially when they are achieved and successful people, we don't realize that they are humans behind that. And they also carry trauma and experiences. And when they share that, it makes them more humanized, but it also makes them very relatable. And I think it really gives people out there who might be listening a lot of hope as well.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the way that business and innovation in the world is going, it's going to be very AI centric and robotic. The only thing that is thread through is the human connection. It is the ability to connect emotionally and through storytelling, and those aspects can never be replaced by AI, which is why it's so important now more than ever in the world that we reach out on human levels, and that the surface conversations are put to the side, and that truth, authenticity, and rawness are leading the way in the narratives.
In a podcast I did a little while back, we talked about the power of we and how people want to be part of a collective. And so that really resonates with me, what you're saying here, because it plays into that, how people want to have that direct connection. And as good as AI is going to be for many different businesses, it is lacking that human connection, and it does lack the emotional side of it. Now, one of the things that I really loved about Unreserved is how it does hold that emotional side. It's the paradox, it's the grief, it's the joy, it's the softness and the strength, the strategy and the soul. So how have you personally learned to hold that kind of complexity? Because you have multiple business going on as well as being a mother. So especially while you're building those businesses, especially while you're raising your family and leading the movement, how have you been able to handle that paradox?
It's a great question. And the thing that surfaces the fastest for me is just with so much grace. It is a very busy schedule. I, on average, am working anywhere to 60 to 70 hours a week. I have a 3-year-old. I've been married to my husband for 13 years. And, currently I'm CEO of 5 different businesses. And I challenge myself daily. Anything that I feel afraid of, I go into that direction, and I encourage other women to do so. But at the end of the day, I have to lead myself with so much grace and understanding that I am always working at my utmost capacity so I can put my head down at the end of the day feeling accomplished, but also knowing that I'm doing my best to lead in service. And there's a lot of pressures on women these days. No longer was it just to enter the corporate field and then entrepreneurship. It's also to make $1 million by the end of the week and, have 90 kids and to do it all. But I think we just forget that the pressure is at times surmountable, and we have to also provide equal amounts of just grace to ourselves because we're doing our best, and society still has incredible amounts of lenses for us and titles, and every year it gets more and more. So if you're ever in these periods of feeling like you're not good enough or you're not doing enough, just understanding that you are maybe being asked to stretch or to slow down because you're just becoming that woman. So just being in that becoming phase with grace, with a lot of love, and, head at the end of the day on the pillow, knowing you're doing your best.
I love that. I was listening to not a podcast, a book this morning, an audiobook, and it was talking about the 4 seasons of life and how we winter and then we go into the spring, and just like any economic cycle, any cycle really in life, we go from the winter to the spring to the summer to the fall, and how each of those represents something different. And I think what you said with giving yourself grace throughout all of them, especially when you are in that wintering stage, because maybe you've stretched and you need to be able to recoup and set up your next steps for the next phase that's coming this spring. I think that giving yourself grace is something that we often say to each other, but very rarely give ourselves. I know I personally, I give myself very little grace. My expectations are high and I give myself very little grace. So I love hearing you say that, because I think it's really important for us to do, especially women, because we do a lot, and there is a lot of expectations, as you say. So
It's the permission. Sometimes you need to see the women on stages or building the empire say, just give yourself grace and permission. It's just a season, right? It's a high and a low, and all of the emotions are granted. You are allowed to have the bad days. You are allowed to have the great days, and you are allowed to have the flex weeks and the rest periods. It's all part of the beautiful process.
Yeah. Now, you've said that Unreserved is part of a bigger shift. It's a shift away from the old rules, the old hustle, performance, and perfection, just like we were talking about. What outdated success stories do you think that women are finally being invited to let go of? The ones where, we have to make $1 million by the end of the week or have 90 kids. What's your personal thoughts?
I think that we have been objectified in many different angles, from corporate to being a mother, to being a wife, to being an entrepreneur. And the expectations do become suffocating at the end of the day. I think it's very hard as a woman to manage having children, locking down the household, being an entrepreneur, or even working in corporate. And we hold a lot of emotional capacity, but nobody really speaks in the form of sisterhood, where the vulnerabilities lead in the conversations. Back in the day when women, were not even allowed in corporate, which is still very new. We were only allowed to get our own credit cards not that long ago. We had a village supporting us. We had sisterhood. We had communities and, connection, collaboration. We had it. And we started entering the workforce, which was a beautiful, beautiful moment. But the expectations were still to hold both titles. And then some, as we evolved in this beautiful mechanism of what a woman can be classified in her multiple titles today, we also, in my world, became founders. So now we had to hold the title of growing the businesses, leading the teams, having the children, leading the homes, and all of those are outdated, as if we were not allowed to ask for help or support, or again, give ourselves permission to be in those moments of rest or saying, I'm not okay. And it's unbalanced in this day and age. And we are also demonstrating we do it in a way of these girl boss and $1 million Gen Zs and the TikTok stars and the influencers. And although these stories do happen, they're few and far between. But we are just cultivating this narrative of impossibility for women to achieve. And instead, it should be, how can we support one another?
Yeah.
How can the sisterhood come together? How can we literally break the glass ceilings for the next generations, not make it harder for them? And that is part of the movement that I want to be creating, as well as, allowing women to see the power in their pain, and the triumph in their trauma is also to understand that we don't have to play the game that we didn't write the rules for. We can rewrite the rules of business and of life. We have that power. We've never had so much power, and we're only going to be granted more when more money comes into the hands of women. So it's time that we collectively start saying, I don't subscribe to that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I recently read an article on how women can actually multitask. And I know that oftentimes we say you shouldn't multitask, your brain should be focused on one thing. But women as a collective can multitask on such a high level compared to our alter side. So I think it's really important to also remember supporting each other compounds that effect even more. It's interesting because when you mentioned social media a moment ago, we're all on social media and we see girl boss everywhere. And what is meant to be motivating often, like you see someone girl boss, you're like, yeah, good for you. Or wow, that motivates me and gives me hope and encourages me. Now when I see girl boss, I have a negative connotation towards it, interestingly, because I have, with this podcast platform, reached out to some of these these girl bosses and been like, I love what you're doing. I'd love to welcome you on the podcast, because I very much am like you, where I think it's wonderful to highlight each other, support each other, uplift each other. And a lot of the commentary you get back from these girl bosses is not supportive or collective. And so it's unfortunate, because oftentimes that veil of what we see from social media is a very filtered veil on social media. And it's not always exactly what we think. Somebody may be girl bossing it, but they might be a terrible girl boss. So I think it's really important how you're really emphasizing that fact of togetherness and supporting people. Now, you've seen firsthand what happens when women do finally take off that filter, especially the social media one themselves. So what are some of the ripple effects that you've personally witnessed in this, in their lives, in their businesses, the way that they are showing up to the world?
In terms of removing the filter in a good way or a
bad? Well, either. Actually, I open the question up for either direction you want to go.
Well, I can speak to my own testament because I know my own truth, but I absolutely showed up on social media, I'd say 4 years ago, in the suits, leaning heavily on the ink and the medium and the Forbes and the publications and the awards. Again, because that's what I thought I was supposed to be. And I thought that was what the world would reciprocate with. And although it was beneficial for me to use that character, that byproduct of my marketing, to build the businesses and to acquire the clients, behind the scenes with clients, I was very, very raw, very truthful, very sisterhood, because it's a huge honor every time I get to work one-to-one with somebody in their business or in their small business, corporate enterprise. And I started to, little by little, remove the facade, the filters, the projections of what I thought I should be. And the more that I did that, the more that I started to attract the right women, the right opportunities, the right sisters that I now feel so incredibly blessed to call friends, best friends, business mentors, acquaintances. And that's because I stepped into my vulnerability. I spoke and led from a place of truth, and I stopped operating the way that I thought the world wanted me to be. And it was the most powerful shift I could ever do, not just in my business, but especially in my life, because it brought me what I call like my blessed sisters. I could not have held that kind of relationships and success and sisterhood prior to, because I was leading from a different energy in a different place. And I highly, highly recommend that if there's one thing that women can do out there, it is to just start leading from a place of vulnerability.
I think that's really powerful to say that, especially for women to hear that out loud, because so often we are trying to not show our vulnerability. I don't want to say victim of that, but I definitely am someone who, I've got a great husband, and he'll be like, oh, do you want me to do this? And I'm like, no, I can do it. I want to do it. Like, I have been so conditioned, I'll say, coming from the background that I come from the corporate world, the business world, and the entrepreneurship world, that I'm like, no, I have to do it all on my own. I have to figure it out, learn it all on my own. But that's not vulnerable. And I absolutely agree that when you do open up to vulnerability, it brings in so many resources that you didn't even realize you needed. I think that that's great. Now, I want to ask for women, because there are a large amount of females who listen here. For women who are listening and haven't yet shared their story, maybe not even with themselves because they're too afraid to create their own story, what is one practice, whether it's journal prompting or questions, that she could begin with to start uncovering and reclaiming her story today?
I also say there's so much power in the pause. And when you take the time to be in a space of stillness, you can actually start to really connect to your women intuition, or to source, or to universe, or to God. There is another being inside of you. And when you take the moment to have the conversations with her, you allow yourself to evoke the emotions, the storytelling, the words, the narratives that the world needs to hear from you. So I would absolutely recommend just being in stillness and being in the pause, and knowing that at the end of the day, you are the speaker. You are the speaker box, I should say. You are the one that is meant to share your story, to share your knowledge, to share your skill set with other women, because that's why it was given to you in the first place. And the limiting beliefs that start to surface for you, I would start to question them, because they're not her, right? That's an exterior source. That is a warfare within you that you have to learn to silence in order to hear the voice of her. And that's the wound to the scar. Yeah. So encouragement is definitely, there's power in the pause. Be in stillness. Connect intuitively on an intuition level to her and speak from that place.
Yeah. I always think of her as like your unconscious, what lives underneath your critical faculty in the lower parts of your being. And we have what is such an interesting thing, a concept to think about, is that who we want to be is already wanting us as well. That's what one of my girlfriends, Nicole, had said in a podcast we had a little while back. Who we want to be is already wanting us. Mm-hmm. And her that you speak of is already wanting to share her narrative. And I think that's really interesting to bring into the next question, because you curated 24 stories for Unreserved of all different women from different walks of life who provided their journey and shared it as a narrated story to the rest of the world. So in reading and curating all of those chapters, was there one story or maybe a theme that caught you off guard, that was different or helped crack you wide open, gave you a new thought process in the meantime, or showed you a different way that somebody dealt with something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when these brave, bold women signed on to Unreserved, they didn't expect to have the profound transformation that they did in the end. And a lot of them, there's one version of you that is writing the story. And then there's another version of you that comes out when the story is public. And the version of them that was writing the story initially, we had writing coaches, we had NLP practitioners, we had a big support system, because it was a constant reminder that you cannot desire, you cannot create what you don't already contain. Mm-hmm. So it's just about uncovering all of the layers, the limiting beliefs, the warfare to speak from that place. And then understanding that when that version came out to the world, there was scrutiny. I got scrutiny. Some other women did as well. And that was a great lesson for them to understand who they were before the world is telling you who you are. And that principle really comes from your belief is built internally. It's not found externally. So there were so many learning lessons throughout this process that was uncovered, because in the end, many came on thinking, okay, this is a 2,500 word chapter. And some that delivered, we were like, no, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. Mm-hmm. And we together as a sisterhood collective came to levels of such rawness and vulnerability. And I think that is the magic of Unreserved. That book is now going global, and other women around the world are seeing themselves in these stories and finding the courage to build and to speak and to storytell from that place in their own lives.
I think that's wonderful. Now, for our female listeners who listen, I know my memory sometimes can swoon away from me, but for any of the female listeners listening to this episode who may forget every word that we say, but remembers just one thing, what do you want her to remember about the power of her story and the legacy she is here to create?
I want her to remember that your pain doesn't disqualify you. It prepares you to be introduced to your power, and that we are no longer going to see our challenges, our traumas as something that had happened to us. We will reframe it to see it as something that happened for us, so that we can then share and encourage and inspire other women to get through what they're going through. And when we stop seeing your story as your own and you start to see it as a way of being of service, your life will change.
That's incredible. What a wonderful way to end today. So thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me, Ashley. It was an amazing opportunity to get to talk with you. For our listeners, before we jumped on, I said to Ashley, you're who I want to be when I grow up, kind of thing, because it's just incredible the things that you have achieved. And honestly, the message that you are sharing with women out there, I think it is just, I can't wait to see your movement and how it continues to grow and unite the women globally. So if our conversation has stirred something in you today, if you felt cracked open, called forward, or finally seen, guys, you're not alone. This has a ripple effect of choosing to live unreserved, just like Ashley's book. So if you want more, make sure that you are following Ashley's journey and the powerful movement that she is building at ashleydeland.com. It's going to be linked in the section below, so make sure that you visit that. Also, you can hang out with her on her Instagram at Ashley Deland and tune into her unfiltered brilliance on her podcast, She Wears the Pants. And if today's conversation lit a fire in you, which I hope it did because it did for me, the book is your next step. So check it out. You can read Unreserved, Rewriting the Rules of Business. It is available on Amazon, which is also going to be linked below. So just search Unreserved, Ashley Deland, and let the stories inside unlock something for you, because I can tell you it already has. And as we have the authors visiting us on the podcast, they also get to hear them as well firsthand. So until next time, everyone, keep owning your truth, breaking the mold, and writing your legacy that's about to happen for you. So Ashley, thank you again for joining me today.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you. And everyone else, thank you so much as well. Take care.